The dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m. as Daniel finished his shift at the construction site. His back ached. His hands were rough from handling materials all day, and all he wanted was to get home to his little girl. The city streets were mostly empty at this hour. Just the occasional taxi and a few late-night workers like himself heading home. He was stopped at a red light, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel and thinking about whether he'd remembered to tell the babysitter about Sophie's math homework when he saw her. At first, he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. There, standing under a flickering streetlight about 50 feet ahead, was a woman in a full wedding dress. The white fabric seemed to glow in the darkness, and even from a distance he could tell something was very wrong. As Daniel drove closer, he could see her more clearly. She was waving her arms frantically at passing cars, her face streaked with black makeup, her hair falling out of what must have been an elaborate updo. Car after car drove right past her. One even swerved to avoid her, the driver probably thinking she was drunk or dangerous. But Daniel had a 6-year-old daughter at home, and he'd raised her to believe that you help people when they're in trouble. His ex-wife used to call him too soft, too trusting. Maybe she was right, but he couldn't just drive past someone clearly in distress. He slowed down and pulled over to the curb. The woman practically ran to his car, her heels clicking on the pavement. She yanked open the passenger door before he could even roll down his window. "Please," she gasped. "Please, I need to get out of here. I'll pay you whatever you want, just please drive." Her voice was panicked, desperate. Daniel hesitated for just a second, taking in the scene. She was young, maybe late 20s, with the kind of face you'd see in magazines. Her dress looked like it cost more than his car. But her eyes were wild with fear and something else. Determination, maybe. "Are you in danger?" "Should I call the police?" Daniel asked, keeping his voice calm. No police, please, just drive. I'm not crazy, I swear. I just need to leave." Something in her voice made him believe her. She wasn't drunk or on drugs. She was scared and running from something. Daniel nodded and clicked the lock button to unlock all the doors. The woman practically threw herself into the passenger seat, pulling her massive dress in after her. Layers of tulle and silk filled half his car. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you so much." "I'm Claire, by the way." "Daniel," he replied, pulling back into traffic. "Where do you need to go?" Claire was silent for a moment, staring straight ahead. Then her face crumpled and she started crying. Not delicate, pretty crying, but the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that come from somewhere real and painful. Daniel reached into his back seat and grabbed his daughter's emergency bag. He always kept it stocked with tissues, water bottles, and snacks for Sophie's various meltdowns. He handed Claire the whole bag. "Here," he said gently. "Take your time." Claire grabbed the water bottle first, taking several long gulps. Then she used about 10 tissues to wipe her face. The black streaks got worse before they got better. But eventually she managed to compose herself a little. "I don't know where to go," she finally admitted. "I just ran. I didn't think past getting away." "Okay," Daniel said, trying to sound reassuring. "That's okay. We'll figure it out." "Did someone hurt you?" "Not physically," Claire said, laughing bitterly. "Though maybe that would have been more obvious, right? Easier to explain." Daniel kept driving, heading nowhere in particular, just away from wherever they'd started. The streets were getting quieter as they moved away from the downtown area. "You don't have to tell me anything," Daniel said. "But I finish work in about 20 minutes normally, and I need to get home to my daughter. The babysitter charges extra after midnight, so we need to figure out some kind of plan." Claire turned to look at him properly for the first time. "You have a daughter?" "Yeah, Sophie, she's 6. Probably fast asleep right now, dreaming about unicorns or whatever 6-year-olds dream about." "Just you and her?" "Just us," Daniel confirmed. "Her mom left when Sophie was 3, decided family life wasn't for her after all." He didn't know why he'd told her that. He usually kept that information private, not wanting pity or questions. But something about this strange situation made normal rules feel suspended. Claire was quiet for a moment, processing. "I was supposed to get married tonight," she said softly. "About 2 hours ago, actually. There were 300 people waiting in that church." Daniel glanced at her, then back at the road. "What happened?" "I heard him," Claire said, her voice hollow. "My fiancé. I was in the bride's room about to walk down the aisle, and I realized I'd left my phone in the groom's room from earlier. I went to get it, and I heard him talking through the door. He was on a call with someone, probably his business partner, and he was laughing about how this wedding was going to seal some deal with my father's company. How I was the final piece of the puzzle to merge the two businesses. She took another shaky breath. He said, and I quote, "She's pretty enough and won't cause problems. It's the perfect arrangement." Like I was a couch he was purchasing. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest. "That's horrible. The thing is," Claire continued, "I should have seen it coming. Richard, that's his name. He's been groomed his whole life to take over his family's empire. Billion-dollar tech company. And my father runs a major investment firm. This wedding was always about business. I just thought maybe he loved me too, you know? That it could be both." "So you ran," Daniel said. "So I ran," Claire confirmed. "Right out the back door of the church, through the parking lot, and just kept going. I heard people shouting behind me, but I didn't stop. I walked for probably 30 minutes before I got to that street where you found me. My feet are killing me, by the way. These shoes cost $800 and they're torture devices." Daniel couldn't even imagine spending that much on shoes. That was more than his rent. "I left everything," Claire said, seeming to realize it all at once. "My phone, my purse, my coat. I literally have nothing except this dress." They drove in silence for a few minutes. Daniel's mind was racing. He should probably take her to a hotel or something, but she didn't have money or ID. A police station seemed wrong if she didn't want that. And something about her story, the raw honesty in her voice, made him want to help more than just drop her somewhere. "Look," Daniel said, surprising himself, "this is probably a terrible idea, and you should definitely say no if it makes you uncomfortable. But I have a couch. You could crash there for tonight, figure things out in the morning. I promise I'm not some creep. You can lock the bedroom door and I'll sleep on the floor in Sophie's room." Claire stared at him like he'd just offered her $1 million. "You don't even know me." "I know you're in trouble and you need help," Daniel said simply. "And I know what it's like to have your life fall apart and need someone to be kind when everything feels impossible." Tears filled Claire's eyes again, but this time they seemed different. Softer somehow. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, thank you." As Daniel turned the car toward his neighborhood, he couldn't shake the feeling that this night was going to change everything. He just didn't know how much yet. The apartment building wasn't fancy. Daniel pulled into the small parking lot behind a 3-story brick building that had seen better days. The exterior light was out again, and he made a mental note to remind the landlord about it for the 3rd time this month. "It's not much," Daniel said as he turned off the engine, "but it's home." Claire looked at the building and then at him, and for the first time that night she smiled a little. "Right now it looks perfect." They made their way up to the 2nd floor, Claire gathering her enormous dress in her arms and trying not to trip. The fabric kept catching on the stair railings. By the time they reached his door, they were both trying not to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Daniel unlocked the door as quietly as possible and peeked inside. Mrs. Chen, his usual babysitter, was asleep on the couch with the TV on low volume. He paid her the extra $20 for going past midnight and apologized for being late. Mrs. Chen took one look at Claire standing in the hallway in her wedding dress and raised her eyebrows, so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline, but bless her, she didn't ask a single question. She just grabbed her purse and headed home to the apartment next door. Once inside, Daniel checked on Sophie. She was sound asleep, her arm wrapped around her stuffed elephant, her nightlight casting soft stars on the ceiling. He watched her for a moment, this little person who was his entire world, and wondered if he'd made a mistake bringing a stranger home. But when he returned to the living room and saw Claire standing there looking lost and vulnerable, he knew he'd done the right thing. "The bathroom's there," he pointed. "I'll find you something to change into. That dress can't be comfortable." "You have no idea," Claire said, already trying to reach the zipper on her back. "This thing weighs about 20 pounds. Daniel found an old pair of sweatpants and his most comfortable t-shirt. They'd be huge on her, but they were clean and soft." When Claire emerged from the bathroom 15 minutes later, her face scrubbed clean and her hair pulled into a simple ponytail, she looked completely different. Younger. More real. "I feel human again," she said, sinking onto the couch. "Thank you for all of this." Daniel heated up some leftover soup and made toast. They sat at his small kitchen table and Claire ate like she hadn't had a meal in days. Maybe she hadn't. Wedding days were probably crazy, so, Daniel said gently, "What happens now? Won't people be looking for you?" Claire's face darkened. "Oh, definitely. Richard's probably losing his mind. Not because he's heartbroken, but because I've embarrassed him in front of everyone who matters in his world. My father is probably furious. That business deal he wanted is gone now. What about your mom? She passed away when I was 16, Claire said quietly. Breast cancer. After that, it was just me and Dad. He threw himself into work, and I guess I was looking for someone to fill that empty space. Richard seemed perfect. Successful, confident, came from the right family. I thought I was lucky. Daniel noticed she was gripping her mug so tight her knuckles were white. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. No, I think I need to, Claire said. I need to say it out loud so I remember why I ran. Because part of me is already wondering if I made a huge mistake. If I should have just gone through with it. That's not making a mistake, Daniel said firmly. That's trading your entire life for other people's expectations. Trust me, I know something about that. Claire looked at him curiously. Your ex-wife? Daniel nodded. Victoria. We met in college. She was studying business, I was doing construction management. Her family never thought I was good enough. Not rich enough, not ambitious enough. But she said she loved me anyway, and I believed her. We got married, had Sophie, and for a while it was good. Or at least I thought it was. He got up to refill their mugs, buying himself a moment before continuing. Then one day Sophie was 3 years old and Victoria sat me down and said she'd made a mistake. That she'd tried to make the simple life work, but she wanted more. More excitement, more money, more everything. She left that week. Signed away custody rights, moved to California with some guy she'd met at her office. She sends birthday cards and Christmas presents, but that's it. I'm so sorry, Claire whispered. The thing is, Daniel said, sitting back down, I was devastated at first, felt like a failure, but then I realized Sophie and I were actually happier without someone who didn't really want to be there. It's hard, yeah. I work long hours, money's always tight, and I'm constantly worried I'm screwing up this whole parenting thing. But at least it's real. At least we're not pretending. Claire was silent for a long moment. Richard used to get annoyed when I wanted to do normal things. Like I suggested we cook dinner together once, and he looked at me like I'd suggested we eat off the floor. He said that's what staff is for. We had a housekeeper, a chef, a driver. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done my own laundry or grocery shopping. That sounds lonely, Daniel observed. It was, Claire admitted. Everyone around me, but no one actually with me, you know? And the wedding planning was a nightmare. Richard's mother took over everything. I wanted something small and meaningful, but she insisted on this massive production. 300 guests, most of whom I'd never met. A dress that cost more than a car. Flowers flown in from Ecuador. It was like watching someone plan a corporate merger, not a celebration of love. She laughed bitterly. Which I guess it was in the end. They talked for another hour, sharing stories about their lives. Claire told him about growing up wealthy but isolated, attending private schools where friendships felt transactional. Daniel shared stories about Sophie's latest obsession with dinosaurs, and how she'd convinced him to read the same book about velociraptors 17 times last week. Around 2 a.m, exhaustion finally caught up with both of them. Daniel set Claire up on the couch with blankets and pillows. He gave her his phone in case she needed anything during the night and showed her where everything was. Daniel, Claire said as he was heading to Sophie's room. Why did you help me? Really? You could have just dropped me at a hotel or called someone. Why bring a complete stranger into your home? Daniel thought about it for a moment. A few years ago, right after Victoria left, I was at the grocery store with Sophie. I was trying to buy food for the week and my card got declined. I didn't realize Victoria had cleared out our joint account before she left. I was standing there completely humiliated with my 3-year-old asking why we couldn't buy the cereal she wanted. And this elderly woman behind me in line paid for my groceries, just handed the cashier her card and wouldn't take no for an answer. He smiled at the memory. She told me that kindness is never wasted, even when it's given to strangers. Especially when it's given to strangers. So I guess I'm paying it forward. Claire's eyes were shiny with tears again. You're a good person, Daniel. I'm just trying to be the kind of person I'd want Sophie to grow up to be, he said simply. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out your next steps. But as Daniel lay on the floor of Sophie's room, listening to his daughter's soft breathing, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Claire's story, about how money and status couldn't buy the things that actually mattered. And he wondered what tomorrow would bring when the real world came crashing back in. Because wealthy, powerful people didn't usually just let someone walk away from a billion-dollar arrangement. Richard would come looking for his runaway bride. It was only a matter of time. Daniel woke up to the sound of laughter. For a confused moment, he couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Then he remembered Claire. He'd fallen asleep on Sophie's floor, and judging by the sunlight streaming through the window, it was later than he usually slept. He stumbled out to the living room and stopped in the doorway. Sophie was sitting on the couch next to Claire, both of them still in their pajamas, giggling over something on the tablet. Claire had her hair in a messy bun, and she looked more relaxed than she had the night before. "Daddy," Sophie noticed him first. "There's a princess on our couch. She says her name is Claire, but I think she's a real princess because she has a princess dress in the bathroom." Claire looked up at Daniel with an apologetic smile. "She woke up and found me. I hope that's okay. We've been watching videos of baby pandas." "Baby pandas are so clumsy," Sophie informed him seriously. "They fall down a lot, just like me." Daniel couldn't help but smile. "That's true, Bug. You do fall down a lot." He looked at Claire. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months, actually," Claire said, and she seemed surprised by her own answer. "Your couch is more comfortable than my $1,000 mattress." Over breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, which was all Daniel had in the apartment, Sophie asked Claire a million questions. Where was she from? Did she like dinosaurs? Could she do a cartwheel? Did she know that dolphins sleep with one eye open? Claire answered every single question patiently, and Daniel noticed how natural she was with Sophie. Not the awkward, trying too hard way some of his dates had been with his daughter. Just genuine and kind. "I have to go to work," Daniel said reluctantly after checking the time. "I already texted my supervisor that I'd be late, but I can't miss the whole day. Mrs. Chen can watch Sophie, but I can stay with her," Claire offered quickly. "If that's okay with you. I don't have anywhere else to be, and honestly, playing with Sophie sounds a lot better than thinking about my problems." Daniel hesitated. It was one thing to let Claire sleep on his couch. It was another to leave his daughter with her. But Sophie was already bouncing excitedly at the idea, and something in his gut told him Claire was trustworthy. "Okay," he said, "but you need to keep the door locked and don't answer if anyone knocks. Mrs. Chen is next door if you need anything." "We'll be fine," Claire assured him. "Sophie's going to teach me about velociraptors. Apparently, I have a lot to learn." After Daniel left, Claire and Sophie fell into an easy rhythm. They built a massive blanket fort in the living room, had a tea party with stuffed animals, and Claire helped Sophie practice her reading. It felt strange and wonderful at the same time. Claire had never spent much time around children. In her world, kids were something you had eventually, once the right time came, once it made sense for the family image. But Sophie was different. She was real and honest and said exactly what she thought. When Claire made a silly voice while reading a story, Sophie laughed so hard she snorted. When Claire admitted she didn't know how to make a proper paper airplane, Sophie spent 20 minutes teaching her, taking the role of teacher very seriously. "Your daddy is really nice," Sophie said during lunch, which consisted of peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles. "He works really hard so I can have toys and books and stuff." "I can tell he loves you very much," Claire said. "Do you have a daddy?" Sophie asked innocently. Claire paused. "I do, but we're not really talking right now." "Why not?" "Because we had a disagreement. About some important things." Sophie nodded like she understood completely. "Me and Daddy disagree sometimes too. Like, I think I should be allowed to eat ice cream for breakfast, but he says no. But we still love each other even when we disagree." Claire felt something tighten in her chest. "That's how it should be." "Maybe you should call your daddy and say sorry," Sophie suggested. "That's what Daddy makes me do when I'm mean to my friends." "Maybe," Claire said softly, though she knew it wasn't that simple. That afternoon, while Sophie was napping, Claire finally allowed herself to think about what she'd done. She'd left Richard at the altar. Left her father and all those guests. Left her entire life behind. She had no phone, no money, no plan. She was wearing borrowed clothes and sleeping on a stranger's couch. And somehow she felt freer than she had in years. But freedom didn't pay bills or solve problems. She needed to figure out what came next. She couldn't stay with Daniel forever. Couldn't hide from her old life indefinitely. When Daniel got home that evening, he looked exhausted. His clothes were dusty, and he had a cut on his hand from some equipment at the site. "Let me see that," Claire said immediately, pulling him to the kitchen sink. She washed the cut gently and bandaged it while Daniel watched her with a curious expression. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "You've done a lot more for me," Claire replied. Sophie ran to hug her father, talking a mile a minute about everything she and Claire had done that day. Daniel listened with the kind of attention that Claire realized she'd been craving her whole life. Someone who actually cared about the small, ordinary moments. After Sophie went to bed, Daniel and Claire sat on the small balcony of his apartment. It overlooked the parking lot, nothing fancy, but the night air was cool and pleasant. "I need to start figuring things out," Claire said. "I can't hide here forever." "What do you want to do?" Daniel asked. "Honestly, I have no idea. I've never had to figure out my own life before. Everything was always planned for me. The right schools, the right internship at my father's company, the right marriage. I don't even know what I like to do." "What did you study in college?" "Business administration," Claire said with a bitter laugh. "Because that's what was expected. But I remember I took this one elective, interior design. I loved it. Walking into a space and imagining how it could be better, more beautiful, more functional. I got an A+ and my professor said I had real talent. But my father said it was a hobby, not a career." "Why not?" Daniel asked. "Because serious people don't do creative work in my family. They do business. They make deals. They build empires." "That's ridiculous," Daniel said bluntly. "Someone has to design all those buildings and homes and offices. Why shouldn't it be someone with talent who actually cares?" Claire looked at him surprised. In her world, people didn't question these things. You did what your family expected, what your social circle approved of. The idea that she could just decide to do something different felt revolutionary and terrifying at the same time. "I don't even know where I'd start," she admitted. "Well, you can't start anything until you deal with your current situation," Daniel pointed out. "Richard and your father, they're going to come looking for you eventually. You need to be ready for that." As if the universe had been waiting for exactly that moment, there was a loud knock on the door. Not a friendly knock. An aggressive, demanding knock. Daniel and Claire looked at each other, both knowing exactly who it was. "Stay here," Daniel said, moving toward the door. But before he could reach it, a voice boomed from the hallway. "I know she's in there. Open this door right now, or I'll have the building manager open it for me." It was Richard, and from the sound of it, he wasn't alone. Claire stood up, her heart pounding. The moment she'd been dreading had arrived. Her old life had found her hiding place, and now she had to decide. Did she face it, or did she keep running? Daniel looked back at her, silently asking what she wanted to do. And in that moment, Claire made a choice. She'd run once. She wouldn't run again. "I'll handle this," she said, walking toward the door with more courage than she felt. Claire opened the door to find Richard standing in the hallway with two large men in dark suits, clearly security, and behind them, her father. Richard looked furious, his jaw clenched tight, his expensive suit perfectly pressed despite it being late evening. Her father looked older than she remembered, his face drawn with stress and disappointment. "There you are," Richard said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" "The embarrassment? I don't care," Claire interrupted, and she was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I'm not going back, Richard. Don't be ridiculous," her father stepped forward. "Claire, this has gone far enough. You've made your point. Now it's time to come home and fix this mess." Daniel appeared beside Claire, not touching her but making his presence known. Richard's eyes landed on him with cold assessment. "And who are you?" Richard demanded. "Someone who actually gives her a choice," Daniel said calmly. Richard's laugh was harsh. "A choice? Is that what you think this is about?" He turned back to Claire. "Do you know what you've cost us? The Whitmore-Ashford merger is dead. My father's investors are questioning his judgment. Your father's company stock dropped 3 points when the news broke. 3 points. I'm sorry about the business deal," Claire said, and she meant it. "But I can't marry you, Richard. You don't love me. You never did, love." Richard looked genuinely confused, like she'd started speaking another language. "This isn't about love, Claire. This is about building something bigger than both of us. This is about legacy and power and treating me like a chess piece instead of a person," Claire finished. "I heard you, Richard. On the phone before the wedding." talking about how I was the final piece of the puzzle, how I was pretty enough and wouldn't cause problems. Richard had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but he recovered quickly. You misunderstood. I was just, don't lie to her, Daniel cut in. She knows what she heard. Nobody asked you, Richard snapped. Then he looked around the shabby hallway, at Daniel's worn work boots and Claire in borrowed sweatpants. Is this really what you want, Claire? To throw away everything for this? Before Claire could answer, her father spoke up. Claire, please. Be reasonable, come home. We'll cancel the wedding officially. Take some time, whatever you need. But you can't stay here with some stranger. He's not a stranger, Claire said quietly. In 2 days, Daniel has shown me more genuine kindness than I've seen in my entire relationship with Richard. Kindness doesn't pay bills, her father said sharply. It doesn't provide security or opportunity or happiness, Claire interrupted. It doesn't provide those things either. And you know what? I'd rather be happy in a small apartment than miserable in a mansion. Richard's expression changed then, becoming harder. If you don't come back and fix this, there will be consequences. I'll make sure you're cut off completely. No trust fund, no family money, no connections. You'll have nothing. I already have nothing, Claire said. You made sure of that when you took away my choices. You're being emotional, Richard said dismissively. You'll regret this when reality sets in. When you can't afford your lifestyle, when you have to actually work for a living, when I have to be a real person, you mean? Claire asked. I think I'm looking forward to that. A door opened down the hallway and Mrs. Chen poked her head out. Everything okay, Daniel? She looked at the security guards with suspicion. Should I call the police? That won't be necessary, Richard said quickly, clearly not wanting more public attention. He looked at Claire one more time. You have 48 hours to come to your senses. After that, the offer is off the table. You'll be completely on your own. I already am, Claire said softly, and I'm okay with that. Her father stepped closer, his voice dropping. Claire, baby, please. Think about your mother. She would want you to be taken care of, to be secure. That hit harder than anything else. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. Mom would want me to be happy. She would want me to marry someone who actually loves me. You know that. Her father's face crumpled slightly, and for a moment he looked like he might argue, but then he just shook his head. You don't understand how the world works. You've always been sheltered, protected. You have no idea how hard life is out there. Then I'll learn, Claire said. Richard made a disgusted sound. Come on, we're wasting our time. He looked at Daniel one last time. I hope you know what you're getting into. She's never worked a day in her life. Never had to struggle for anything. Give it a week and she'll be crying to come back. I think you underestimate her, Daniel said simply. After they left, Claire closed the door and leaned against it, her whole body shaking. The adrenaline that had kept her standing was draining away, leaving her weak and uncertain. You okay? Daniel asked gently. I don't know, Claire admitted. I just turned down my entire inheritance, my family. Everything I've ever known. She laughed shakily. I must be crazy. Or brave, Daniel suggested. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified, Daniel nodded. That's usually how brave feels. They heard a small sound and turned to see Sophie standing in her doorway, rubbing her eyes. Why was everyone yelling? Claire knelt down to Sophie's level. I'm sorry we woke you, sweetheart. Those were some people from my old life. They wanted me to go back with them. Are you going to? Sophie asked, her voice small. No, Claire said firmly. I'm not. Good, Sophie said, wrapping her arms around Claire's neck. I like having you here. Claire hugged her back, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. This little girl barely knew her, and yet she offered acceptance without conditions or ulterior motives. It was humbling. After Sophie went back to bed, Claire and Daniel sat in the dark living room. The confrontation kept replaying in Claire's mind. Richard's anger, her father's disappointment, the finality of burning those bridges. Did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? She asked quietly. I can't answer that, Daniel said honestly, but I can tell you what I see. I see someone who chose herself over everyone else's expectations. That takes guts. I have no money, no job skills, nowhere to go, Claire listed. Richard was right about one thing. I've never had to struggle. I don't know how to do any of this. Then you'll learn, Daniel said, echoing her own words from earlier. Look, I'm not going to pretend it'll be easy. Being on your own is hard. There are days I wonder how I'm going to make rent or if I'm screwing up Sophie's life because I can't give her everything she deserves. But you know what? We figure it out. And you will too. Why are you helping me? Claire asked. You barely know me. I've disrupted your life, put you in an awkward position with those people. Because everyone deserves a chance to start over, Daniel said. And because I think you're stronger than you realize. Over the next week, Claire proved him right. She couldn't stay on Daniel's couch forever, so she started making plans. She found a tiny studio apartment she could afford with the small amount of money she'd saved in a personal account Richard and her father didn't know about. It was nothing like what she was used to. 400 square feet, a questionable heater, and a bathroom the size of a closet. But it was hers. She started looking for work, but quickly realized her business degree meant nothing without her family name attached to it. Every interview led to questions about why she wasn't working at her father's company. The truth, that she'd walked away from $1 billion arrangement, made her sound either crazy or unemployable. It was Daniel who suggested she try something different. You said you liked design. Why not look into that? Claire started small, offering to help people in the building with their apartments for free just to build a portfolio. She rearranged Mrs. Chen's living room, making it feel twice as spacious. She helped a young couple down the hall transform their nursery. Word spread slowly and people started asking for her help, offering to pay small amounts. It wasn't much. Some weeks she wasn't sure how she'd afford groceries, but she was doing something she actually enjoyed, something that felt meaningful. And through it all, Daniel was there. Not as a savior or a solution to her problems, but as a friend. He taught her how to budget, how to shop for bargains, how to fix small things around her apartment instead of calling someone. Sophie appointed herself Claire's assistant, helping her pick out paint samples and arrange furniture. 3 months after the night she'd run from her wedding, Claire was sitting in her tiny apartment, looking at her first real paycheck from a design consultation when her phone rang. She'd finally gotten a new one. Though she'd only given the number to a handful of people, it was Daniel. Hey, I know this is last minute, but I was wondering if you'd want to come to dinner tonight. Sophie's been asking all week. Claire smiled. I'd love to. As she got ready, she caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked different than she had 4 months ago. Her hair was simpler, her clothes less expensive, her face free of the professional makeup she used to wear daily. But her eyes were brighter. She looked happy. She didn't know what the future held or where this path would lead, but for the first time in her life, she was walking it by choice. And that made all the difference. 6 months had passed since that night Daniel found Claire on the side of the road. 6 months of learning, growing, and discovering who she really was beneath all the expectations and designer clothes. Claire's small design business was actually working. She'd gotten her first major client, a young couple renovating their first home, and the before and after photos had gone viral on social media. People loved the story of the runaway bride who'd turned her life around. Her phone was ringing with inquiries, and she'd had to start turning down projects because she couldn't handle them all alone. But tonight wasn't about work. Tonight was Sophie's 7th birthday party. Claire arrived at Daniel's apartment carrying a carefully wrapped present and a homemade cake. She'd learned to bake over the past few months, watching countless videos and making plenty of mistakes. This cake had taken 3 attempts, but it was finally perfect. Chocolate with strawberry filling, decorated with dinosaurs because Sophie was still obsessed with them. Claire. Sophie threw open the door before Claire could even knock. You came. Did you bring the surprise? I did, Claire said, laughing as Sophie dragged her inside. But you have to wait until after we eat. The apartment was decorated with streamers and balloons. Mrs. Chen was there, along with a few kids from Sophie's school and their parents. It was simple and chaotic and perfect. Claire thought about the elaborate birthday parties from her childhood. Professional entertainers, designer cakes, guest lists managed by assistants. None of them had felt as warm as this. Daniel emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of pizza. When he saw Claire, he smiled in that quiet way that had become familiar to her. Something warm spread through her chest, a feeling she'd been trying to ignore for weeks now. You made it, he said. Wouldn't miss it, Claire replied. As the party went on, Claire found herself watching Daniel with Sophie and her friends. The way he patiently refereed their games, how he made sure the quiet kid in the corner felt included, the genuine joy on his face when Sophie opened her presents. This was what love looked like, she realized. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but showing up every single day and caring about the small moments. After the kids left and Mrs. Chen headed home, it was just the three of them cleaning up. Sophie was exhausted but happy, chattering about her favorite presents while trying to stay awake. "All right, Bug," Daniel said, scooping her up. "Time for bed." "But I'm not tired," Sophie protested even as her eyes drooped. "How about Claire reads you a story?" Daniel suggested, looking at Claire hopefully. They'd developed this routine over the past months. Claire would come over for dinner, help with homework, read bedtime stories. It had happened so naturally that Claire hadn't even noticed when it stopped being occasional and became regular. When Daniel's apartment started feeling like home, Claire read Sophie's favorite book about a brave little dinosaur, and by the end, Sophie was asleep. Daniel appeared in the doorway and together they tiptoed out of the room. "She was so happy today," Claire said softly as they settled on the couch with leftover cake. "You're a really good dad." "I try," Daniel said, "though I worry constantly that I'm not enough, that she needs more than I can give her." "She needs exactly what you give her," Claire said firmly. "Love, attention, stability. That's everything." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, then Daniel spoke. "Can I ask you something? Do you ever regret it? Walking away from everything?" Claire thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss the security of knowing exactly where my life was headed. And I miss my mom. I wish she was here to see who I've become. But regret leaving Richard? Never, not for a single second. What about your dad?" That was harder. "I think about calling him sometimes. Part of me hopes he'll reach out, say he understands that he's proud of me, but I know he won't. In his world, I made the wrong choice. I chose happiness over success." "Those things aren't mutually exclusive," Daniel pointed out. "I know that now," Claire said. "I didn't before." She looked at him, really looked at him. His hair was a little messy. He had a small scar on his chin from a work accident last month, and his shirt was wrinkled from a long day. He was nothing like the polished, powerful men from her old life. And she'd never been more attracted to anyone. "Daniel," she started, her heart pounding. These past 6 months, her phone rang. She almost ignored it, but the number looked familiar. When she answered, she was shocked to hear her father's voice. "Claire, it's Dad. Don't hang up, please." Claire's hand trembled. "Dad, I'm outside your apartment building. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes." She looked at Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in her father's car, the same expensive vehicle she'd ridden in countless times growing up. But now it felt foreign, like a costume that no longer fit. "You look good," her father said quietly. "Different, but good." "What are you doing here?" Claire asked. Her father was silent for a moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel even though the car wasn't moving. "I saw your work. The house renovation that went viral. Your designs are beautiful, Claire. Really beautiful." "Thank you," she said carefully. "I was wrong," her father continued, and Claire's eyes widened. She'd never heard him say those words. "I thought I was protecting you, setting you up for a secure future. But I was really just trying to control your life because I was afraid of losing you like I lost your mother." Tears pricked Claire's eyes. "Dad, let me finish," he said. "When your mother died, I threw myself into work because it was the only thing I could control. Business made sense. Numbers and deals and strategies, they were predictable. But parenting you, loving you, that was scary because I could lose you too. So I tried to plan everything, arrange everything, make sure you'd always be taken care of. But I wasn't happy," Claire said softly. "I know that now," her father admitted. "I saw the pictures from that little girl's birthday party today. Someone posted them online, you and that man and his daughter. You were laughing, Claire, really laughing. I haven't seen you look that happy since you were 10 years old." Claire wiped her eyes. "His name is Daniel, and his daughter is Sophie. They're important to me." Her father nodded slowly. "I'm not here to ask you to come back to your old life. I'm here to apologize, and to tell you that I'm proud of you." "Your mother would be too." "Really?" Claire's voice broke. "Really? You had the courage to choose yourself, to build something meaningful from nothing. That takes strength I don't think I have." They talked for an hour. Really talked for the first time in years. Her father told her about how the company was doing, how empty the house felt, how he'd been seeing a therapist who'd helped him understand his mistakes. Claire told him about her business, her tiny apartment, her new life. "Can I see you again?" her father asked as they said goodbye. "Maybe have dinner sometime? I want to be part of your life again if you'll let me. On your terms this time." "I'd like that," Claire said, hugging him tight. When she returned to Daniel's apartment, she was emotionally exhausted but lighter somehow. Daniel took one look at her face and pulled her into a hug. She let herself lean into him, feeling safe and supported. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. "Actually, I'm more than okay." Sophie was still asleep, and they sat on the couch again. Claire knew she needed to finish what she'd started to say before her father called. "Daniel, there's something I need to tell you," she began.
"These past 6 months, you've been there for me in ways I didn't know I needed."
"You taught me what real kindness looks like, what genuine love looks like, and somewhere along the way I fell in love with you." Daniel went very still. "Claire, I know it's complicated," she rushed on. "I know I came into your life as a mess and you were just being kind. If you don't feel the same way, we can pretend I never said anything." "Claire," Daniel interrupted gently, "I've been in love with you for 3 months. I just didn't think I had any right to say anything. You're this amazing, talented woman who's building an incredible life, and you're just the best man I've ever met," Claire finished. "You're kind and patient and genuine. You're an incredible father. You make me want to be better. And when I imagine my future, you're in it. You and Sophie both." Daniel cupped her face in his hands. "Are you sure? Because this life isn't easy. Money's tight, the apartment is small, and dating a single dad means being part of something real," Claire said. "Something built on actual love instead of convenience or business deals. I've never been more sure of anything." When Daniel kissed her, it felt like coming home. Not to a place, but to a person. To a life she'd chosen for herself. A year later, Claire stood in her new office. A real office space for her growing design business. Daniel and Sophie were there for the opening, along with her father, Mrs. Chen, and dozens of clients who'd become friends. She'd designed the space herself, of course. It was bright and welcoming, filled with plants and natural light. On the wall was a framed photo from that night that had changed everything. The wedding dress she'd worn, now altered and donated to a charity that helped women starting over. Speech. Someone called out and Claire laughed. "A year and a half ago, I was standing in a church about to make the biggest mistake of my life," she began. "Instead, I made the scariest, best decision I've ever made. I chose myself. I chose freedom. I chose real love over comfortable lies." She looked at Daniel and Sophie, at her father who'd become an active part of her life again, at the community she'd built from nothing. "Someone once told me that kindness is never wasted, especially when it's given to strangers. A stranger gave me a ride when I needed it most, and he ended up giving me so much more. He gave me a chance to discover who I really am. And I found out I'm stronger than I ever knew." That evening, as they walked home together, Daniel, Sophie, and Claire, Sophie skipped ahead while holding both their hands. "Are you happy?" Daniel asked quietly. Claire thought about her tiny apartment that she'd recently given up to move in with Daniel and Sophie. Her thriving business that had started from nothing. Her rebuilt relationship with her father. This beautiful, imperfect real life she'd created. "I'm more than happy," she said. "I'm free. And that's worth more than all the money in the world." Sophie tugged on their hands. "Can we get ice cream?" "It's almost bedtime," Daniel started. "Please." Sophie gave them both her biggest smile. Claire and Daniel looked at each other and laughed. "Why not?" Claire said. As they walked toward the ice cream shop, Claire knew that somewhere out there, Richard was probably closing another business deal, still treating life like a transaction. Her father was learning to live with an open heart instead of a closed fist, and she was exactly where she belonged, building a life based on love, choice, and the courage to be herself. Sometimes the best things in life start with the scariest decisions. And sometimes a single act of kindness from a stranger can change everything.